Basketball great LeBron James on the court tonight in Game 1 of his NBA Finals. His Cavaliers losing to the Warriors, by the way, 91-113. But he's also in the news because someone spray painted the N-word on the front gate of his Los Angeles home. Here's what he had to say about it.
My family is safe. At the end of the day, they're safe, and that's the most important. But it just goes to show that that racism will always be a part of the world, a part of America. No matter how much money you have, no matter how famous you are, no matter how many people admire you, being black in America is tough.
Let's discuss now. Kamal Bell, host of United Shades of America, CNN legal analyst Mark O'Mara, and political commentator Ben Ferguson. Hello, gentlemen. Kamal, where do we start? I think it's interesting and maybe even more powerful coming from someone like LeBron James, who has seen, almost every word of success, as an athlete, as someone who's famous and someone who's wealthy. But coming from him, he still feels like the N-word somewhat. What's your reaction?
I really give LeBron James a lot of credit. He could have swept this under the rug, considering he's got, he's one of the biggest moments of his career right now. But he came out and said something about it, and LeBron has done a lot of that over the last few years. But yeah, it shows that he's been famous since he was like 17 years old, and yet still, in that moment, he is just another nigger.
Yeah,
he's just he can't get away from that.
Yeah, I should say people still think of him as the N-word. He doesn't think of himself as that. But Ben, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that, because, he has so many fans all over the world. Yeah. And for him to feel that way, do you think that most people understand that, or are there people who still deny, like, why is he doing this? Let him go cry on his pile of money.
I think there's certainly people out there that say, come on, look at the life you're living. There are always going to be haters, whether it's in sports or it's in race. There's always going to be ignorant, racist, bigoted people in the world, not just this country, but the world. You're never going to get rid of stupid, ignorant people. They will always exist. I do think, however, the way that LeBron James put it, talking about the safety of his family, might resonate with a lot of people that might normally say, hey, you're a rich guy, get over it, take the heat, move on. You're not some sort of big victim here. The way that he talked about this, I think, was incredibly not only mature, but also opens up a conversation that needs to be had with many people about the issue of race in a conversational way where it's not so intense or a fight or you got to pick a side here. Because a lot of people like LeBron James. A lot of people root for LeBron James. Remember, he's had controversy, the way he announced the way he was going to Miami, and he took a lot of heat, people burning his jerseys. But that didn't deal with race like this one did. And I think him saying his family, I'm glad my family is safe, really put it in perspective. And look, there's always going to be ignorant people. If there's any good that can come out of this, it's the conversation. And I also think the other thing is the fact that social media is bringing things like this to light. Most of the time now we're seeing, or more times than not, we're seeing the people that do these types of things, one, get busted, and two, they get shamed, as they should. And I hope we find out who these people are.
But I hear so many people, Ben, I hear what you're saying. I hear so many people denying that it even exists. And the reason I made that comment about let him go cry on his pile of money, because I've heard that. Not that that makes any difference.
Sure.
Just because he's, wealthy, it doesn't mean that it doesn't excuse what happened. It doesn't mean that it still doesn't hurt in this society, and it certainly doesn't mean that he shouldn't be that he should be a victim of this. But there's so much denial out there, and during the election we heard so much denial about racism. Oh, everyone's crying about racism in America, and you should be happy to be in America, and on and on and on. And then, you have this happening to LeBron. Mark, go ahead.
Right.
What do you think of that?
I think my concern, Don, is there's no question, Ben's right. There have always been and always will be racist idiots and haters. But my concern over the past several months is that we seem to now have an environment where it is spurring more of this, that all of a sudden hatred and the active hatred is much more acceptable, whether it was from Trump talking about Mexicans being all rapists, or the way, grabbing women by the crotch. The problem that I see over the past several months is that the bizarre behavior that we used to truly only see in a courtroom as a hate crime is now truly showing up more and more. Yes, it got to LeBron James, but it's getting everywhere. We know that there is a lot more visual hate crimes that are happening in this country, and unfortunately, we who are not the idiot haters and racists out there, I think, have an additional obligation to now be even more vocal, more visual, more personal with how we present ourselves as finding this activity to be exactly what it is, completely reprehensible, because it is growing and it is getting more and more dangerous as time goes on.
Ben, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, look, I also think we have to put this a little bit into context and perspective. If you're in the public eye now, people love to hide behind Twitter, Facebook, and attacks. Look at what Kathy Griffin did to Donald Trump's head. I mean, that's how low we've gotten in society. But, you know, there is, when you are in the public eye, the reality is you're going to take a lot of heat. I'm going to have death threats. I'm going to have people that say they wish I died or my parents aborted me. I get that tweet about every week. LeBron James is going to take hate if he loses a game, and he's going to take hate because of there's ignorant
You're not
people.
condoning
They're
it,
always
are
going to
you?
be. No, I'm not. My point is this. We also have to understand that as a country, we need to be clear about what is acceptable and what's unacceptable and not act like when different things like this happen that it's somehow excusable or humorous. And many people think that there are certain things, whether it be holding up the president's head, and we saw that it was humor or it was funny.
I don't see how the two relate to each other, but I'll
well, he just brought it up about hate crimes, and I think that doing that to the president is on the same level.
The problem with it is that, Ben, the problem with it is that now we seem to have an environment where some of those in power, some of those who have authority and are now being looked up to, seem to be subtly suggesting that these type of hints are okay. That's why it wasn't. We know that there's an uptick in hate crimes against people. We know just 4 days ago in Portland, 2 women were harassed by an idiot on a train, and then he ended up killing 2 other people. Yeah. We know there are thousands of other examples that, for example, the Southern Poverty Law Center is keeping track of. It is seemingly now more acceptable to have these type of behaviors happening.
Before we run out of time, I want to give Kamal. Kamal, go ahead, weigh in on this, because I know you're...
No. I'm happy to hear these 2 white guys talk about racism. I don't hear this in my life enough. So please continue. Yes. Black people, brown people have these discussions all the time. I'm happy to let these 2 white guys finally...
You just read my mind. That's why I said I got to go.
We can have this discussion.
Kamal, you read my mind.
Race talk.
But go on.
I'll buy you a beer later, okay?
Go ahead, Kamal, please. Last word.
No, I mean, I honestly am serious about that. Like I heard Ben say that, we don't have these discussions enough. We have them in my house all the time. I got an email just before I came on the show. I mean, we have to have these discussions, and you have to call them out. And it's especially important when white men like these 2 white men call them out, because we don't hear that enough. Yeah.
But I always hear, it's an important discussion that we need to have. It's a conversation that we need to have. And then either you don't have it, right? Nothing gets accomplished. Or you have the conversation and people say that you're race baiting. So then you can't have it both ways when you want to have a conversation so that you prevent things like this from happening. It is then called race baiting. And Kamal, you deal with that on your show all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the thing we have to realize, those of us who want to have the conversation have to realize we have to just keep having the conversation over and over again. And we are going to be called race baiters or all sorts of other horrible things. But if this is a conversation that needs to be had, we have to have the guts enough to keep having it, even when it's hard. The problem is in this country, you want to have one conversation, get it over with. It's not one conversation. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say is we have to remember, yes, LeBron is famous, yes, he's a celebrity, but famous rich people aren't bulletproof. And the fact that his home was threatened probably makes him feel more vulnerable than he normally feels walking around. So I think that's the other thing. It's like, this can all be turned into something horrible.
On this week's episode of your show on United Shades of America, you decide to buy a gun because you feel targeted as a black man who discusses hot-button issues. Here's a clip.
So what are your thoughts on guns?
I believe everybody should be able to own a gun.
Okay.
For protection, especially, you got single mothers in the house. I tell all of, the women that I know, I say, get a gun. Do you have a gun? This ain't the movies. You can't pick a bat.
Yeah. So growing up on the west side of Atlanta, did you see guns in your life when you were a kid?
I seen them, not played with them.
Okay. Did you have friends who were victims of gun violence?
Yeah, most definitely. On both sides. Ones who pulled the trigger and ones who was, caused by one.
So talk to me about that, Kamal.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was that I have been threatened by a lot of people, and I just sort of think, is that something I need to think about? I would not normally think about buying a gun, but I wanted to go through the process of buying a gun, see what it was like, and also really have the discussion with myself about what would that be like if I had a gun in the house. And my wife actually is featured in the episode, and we have a real conversation about that in the episode. And it was also important to talk to black gun owners about how being a black gun owner in America is very different than being a white gun owner in this country.
Thank you all. Don't miss W. Kamau Bell's United Shades of America.